The sun hadn't even risen yet, but Ethan was already on his knees, under a rusted sedan, oil dripping into a pan beside him. His small-town garage, tucked between two shuttered storefronts, was barely hanging on, like most of his life. He wiped his brow with a rag that had seen better days and looked over at the corner of the garage. His 8-year-old son, Lucas, sat cross-legged on a toolbox, flipping through a worn-out math workbook. The boy's sneakers were held together with tape. Ethan had promised him new ones weeks ago, but promises were hard to keep when rent was overdue and customers were few. Still, Ethan smiled. "Got that times table down yet, buddy?" he asked, voice light, though his shoulders sagged from exhaustion. Lucas grinned. "Almost. And I packed us lunch today. Peanut butter. No jelly." Ethan chuckled. "That's my boy." Behind the smile was a mountain of worry. Since his wife passed 2 years ago, every day had been a balancing act. Fixing cars by day, being a dad by night, and somehow keeping their little world spinning. A customer hadn't walked in for 2 days. The fridge at home had a half carton of milk, 1 egg, and a packet of noodles. But Ethan never let the weight show on his face. He believed in working hard, helping others, and raising Lucas to be kind, even when life wasn't. As the morning light finally spilled through the garage window, Ethan stood and stretched, his back aching. He didn't know what the day would bring, but he knew this: if someone needed help, he'd show up. Because even when life gave him very little, he always found something to give. The sky had darkened by mid-afternoon. Heavy clouds rolled in like waves, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Ethan was tightening the last bolt on a pickup's engine when he heard it, a sputtering cough of an old truck struggling down the road. He turned just as the battered vehicle limped into the driveway and came to a smoky stop in front of his garage. The driver's door creaked open, and out stepped a young woman, her jeans and flannel streaked with dust and hay. Her boots were caked in mud, and her auburn braid was half unraveled. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Truck gave up on me a mile back," she said, her voice low and steady. "Barely made it here." Ethan wiped his hands and offered a kind smile. "You're lucky it did. Any further and you might have been pushing it." She hesitated, then added, I don't have any money right now. But I've got to get feed back to the farm before nightfall. Animals haven't eaten since morning." Ethan looked at her, really looked. She wasn't just tired. She was worn, like someone carrying more than just a broken truck. He nodded. "Pop the hood. We'll get you fixed up." Her eyes widened. "But I told you, I can't pay." "I didn't ask for payment," he interrupted gently. "People need help sometimes. That's enough for me." She looked at him for a long moment, something softening in her expression. Then she gave a quiet nod and walked to the front of the truck. As he leaned over the engine, Ethan didn't notice her step beside him. She rolled up her sleeves and said, "Tell me what to do." 2 strangers. 1 broken truck. And a shared understanding that some kindness is too rare to question. Rain began to patter on the tin roof of the garage as the hours passed. Inside, the scent of oil mixed with the warm aroma of coffee Ethan had brewed for them. Clara, he had finally learned her name, was crouched beside him, holding a flashlight steady as he tightened a belt beneath the hood. She wasn't afraid of getting dirty. Her hands were already streaked with grease, and her flannel sleeves rolled up past her elbows. Ethan glanced over, surprised. "You ever work on engines before?" She shook her head. "No. But I helped my dad on the farm growing up. I'm not afraid of hard work." There was a pause, then she added quietly, "Not that you'd guess that from how I look now." Ethan gave her a sidelong look. "You look like someone who showed up when it mattered. That's more than most." Clara smiled faintly, then looked down. "I've been on the road for months now. Left behind a world that never felt real. Fancy clothes, business meetings, fake friends. You from the city? He asked. She nodded. Grew up in a mansion I never called home. My dad was a farmer before he married into money. After he passed, I realized I didn't want that life. So I came back to where he started, trying to figure out who I am. Ethan leaned back, wiping his hands. You'll figure it out. People like you usually do. What about you? She asked. He sighed, eyes drifting toward Lucas, who was now dozing on a blanket beside the tool chest. Lost my wife 2 years ago. Been doing my best since. Fixing cars, raising that boy, one day at a time. Clara looked at him, not with pity, but admiration. Sometimes, in the quiet between strangers, you find a kind of honesty that heals. By nightfall, the rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and clean. The truck roared back to life with a satisfying rumble. Clara stepped back, eyes wide, a grin tugging at her lips for the first time that day. You did it, she said, beaming. Ethan shrugged modestly. We did it. You held the flashlight like a pro. She laughed, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. I'll take the compliment. Clara reached for her wallet, but Ethan gently waved her off. Don't, he said. I told you, I don't fix things just for money. She hesitated. But you gave me your time, your tools. I saw someone who needed help, he said simply. That's enough for me. There was a beat of silence between them. Clara looked at him like no one had in a long time, not with pity, not with expectation, but with something quiet and grateful. I'll never forget this, she said. Ethan gave a tired smile. Just promise you'll pay it forward. She nodded slowly, then climbed into the driver's seat, rolling down the window. Take care of that boy, Ethan. He gave her a small wave as she drove off into the night. 3 days later, Ethan was under another car when the sound of polished tires crunched against the gravel outside. He stepped out to see a sleek black SUV parked in front of his garage. A man in a suit stepped out, holding a crisp white envelope. You're Ethan James. I am, Ethan replied, cautious. The man extended the envelope. Miss Clara asked me to deliver this personally. Ethan took it, brow furrowed. He opened the flap, and froze. Inside was a deed. A new garage space, twice the size of his, fully outfitted, paid for in full. And beneath it, a handwritten note. You fixed more than just my truck. You reminded me who I wanted to be. This is not charity. It's a thank you, from someone who'll never forget what you gave so freely. Clara. Ethan stared at the paper, heart pounding, eyes glassy. He had given without expecting anything. But sometimes, when you give from the heart, the world gives back in ways you never imagined. The new garage stood at the edge of town, clean, bright, and smelling faintly of fresh paint and motor oil. The sun poured through tall windows as Ethan opened the doors for the first time, Lucas by his side, bouncing with excitement. Dad, we have computers now. And a coffee machine. Ethan laughed. Guess we're officially fancy mechanics. Word had spread quickly through the town. Locals stopped by to peek inside, some offering congratulations, others asking when they could bring their cars. But more than that, people saw Ethan differently now, not just as the man with grease-stained hands, but as someone whose kindness had come full circle. He hired 2 young men from the community. Both out of work, both a little lost, just like he had once been. He trained them with patience, often repeating what he always told Lucas. Fix the car, sure. But first, see the person. One quiet morning, as the autumn breeze rustled the trees, an old, familiar truck pulled into the lot. Ethan wiped his hands and stepped out. Clara emerged, wearing jeans and a simple white blouse, a basket of fresh produce in her arms. Her hair was still in that same braid, but her posture had changed, calmer, steadier. I owed you breakfast, she said with a smile. You didn't owe me anything, he replied gently. She looked around at the garage, the apprentices laughing in the back, Lucas sketching with chalk on the floor. You built something good here. So did you, he said, eyeing the small farm logo on her truck's door. They sat outside with coffee, sharing stories, no longer strangers from different worlds. Just two people who chose kindness when it mattered most. And in doing so, they changed each other's lives forever.